This mysterious story began in a small provincial town in the southern Urals in 1996, when the country was experiencing a deep crisis. Factories were closing, hospitals were in a deplorable state, and salaries were delayed for months, if not years. Even the beauty of the local nature could not distract people from their everyday problems. In the vicinity of the town of Kashitum, a mysterious creature appeared, the origin of which cannot be explained by any of the numerous theories to this day. One of the witnesses who saw this creature alive claims, "Of course, I do not dare to assert that this is an extraterrestrial being, but nevertheless, that it is something unusual, that is for sure." People who held the mummy of the creature in their hands also doubted its earthly origin. We have never seen anything like this, of course. Such a little one, as they say, a little one. Of course, it could be a little one, but still not human, one of them reflects. Scientists are skeptical about this theory, which is quite understandable as ufology is not an official science. One of the researchers shares his opinion. "I believe that the idea of it being an alien from space can only be true by 0.5%. However, he also raises an important question. But our condition and the environment make us think that most likely we are dealing with a mutant." Nevertheless, a question arises. Could such a mutant survive in an ordinary apartment without medical care? Such a child cannot survive on its own, he asserts. This leads to reflections on whether the mysterious creature could be a representative of extraterrestrial civilizations, or if the state of the environment could have led to mutations in humans or animals. This program represents an attempt to unravel one of the most unusual stories of the 20th century, the unsolved mystery of aliens and the Kashitum dwarf. The events of 1996 have become surrounded by rumors and speculation, and some witnesses of the strange phenomenon refuse to give interviews, while the accounts of others turn out to be outright fabrications. Our task is to present everything about the Kashitum dwarf without embellishing or distorting the facts. And you will be able to draw your own conclusions. It all began with an intriguing document. Then a captain, now a major of the Kashitum Department of Internal Affairs, Yevgeny Mokachev, was investigating a banal theft of copper cable. The suspect in the theft, Vladimir Nerdanov, boasted to the investigator that he had the corpse of a humanoid stored at his home. He took out of the wardrobe a bundle of red fabric, unfolded it, and to my astonishment, I saw a small corpse, a mummified body approximately 25 to 30 centimeters in dark brown color, with large folds of dried skin, recalls Mokichev. I even smelled it. It emitted a very unpleasant odor. Nerdanov explained that he found the creature already dead, and not knowing how to properly handle the corpse, simply dried it in the sun. Investigator Mokichev decided to act according to the scheme he was familiar with. A corpse has been discovered, and this fact must be officially recorded. However, he questions, could this have been a human? The case clearly did not resemble those he had encountered in his work. Mokachev shared his doubts with his colleague, investigator Vladimir Bendlin. I immediately had mixed feelings. Could it be that this is either a human deformity after all, or something strange, indeed something that I had never encountered until now, he says. When the captain showed the mummy to pathologist Stanislav Samoshkin and forensic medical expert Lyubov Romanova, the story took an unexpected turn. They concluded that there are significant differences that cast doubt on the usual notions about the nature of the find. In particular, the structure of the skull, the number of bones in the skull, then the keel-shaped bony growth on the forehead, which stretches literally to the upper jaw, then the absence of shells, as well as the structure of the forelimbs or hands and the structure of the pelvic bones. In fact, it was difficult to examine the structure of the spine since it had severely curved during the drying process. Upon external examination, the specialists noticed that the creature had a number of anomalies that are not characteristic of human structure. Neither the pathologist nor the paramedic had ever encountered anything like it. Everything looked unusual. The head, arms, legs, remnants of skin, limbs, all of this was completely unlike a child or any kind of miscarriage. The mysterious creature's skeleton was already formed. While in a newborn baby, the bones have a cartilaginous structure. The skull was fully formed, although unusual, but the bones did not have a cartilaginous structure. There were no fontanelles, and the sutures were sharp. It could have been a mummy of an animal. However, in the mysterious creature, the frontal lobes dominate over the facial part, which is not typical for the skull structure of animals. Nevertheless, it also could not have been a human infant. Then who is it? Stanislav Yurievich expressed the opinion that a genetic examination could answer this question, but he believes that there are a number of significant anomalies here that, even if they were characteristic of a human, would not have allowed it to live for even a minute. In other words, it should have died while still in the womb. But if such a being was born and lived, that is already a mystery and a medical problem. An experienced pathologist unequivocally determined that this is not the skeleton of a human child and advised against initiating a case of infanticide. Why did the doctor come to such conclusions? He described the reasons for refusing to do so, citing approximately 20 signs of stark differences between this creature and a human. Captain Bendlin had no grounds for initiating an official investigation. The investigator found no support from the leadership. We have found ourselves in such a situation. Our country, as always, is full of absurdities where everything is turned upside down. Here, at all levels, officials from both the police and the medical field displayed such restraint that they even resorted to slander. Nevertheless, Vladimir Bendlin decided to conduct his unofficial investigation. I fully carried out, so to speak, unauthorized investigative actions. That is, I examined the scene of the incident and included witness testimonies in this examination. However, I did not document this, as it should have been legally formalized, and I had no right to initiate this independently. Therefore, I recorded everything on a magnetic medium using a video camera. The investigator began to reconstruct the events in chronological order. He managed to find out that in the village of Kaulinovaya, a suburb of the city of Koshitma, there lived a lonely pensioner, Tamara Vasilyevna Prosvetina, who found the mysterious creature. As she recounted, she found the little boy Alyoshka in the forest behind the school. According to another version, she claimed that she discovered him in the cemetery during a stormy bad weather. Something prompted her to go to the new cemetery. This happened in May 1996. Here it is worth making a caveat. Tamara Prosvetina was not entirely mentally healthy. I had known this woman before. While working as a district inspector, I had to communicate with her and provide preventive care for her family. I knew that she was registered with a psychiatrist and sometimes wandered through cemeteries, collecting various wreaths from the monuments, even taking photographs of discarded monuments made of metal and bringing all of this home. The woman claimed that she was not there by chance at night in the cemetery. The creature, in her opinion, telepathically summoned her for contact. It was a woman who had a mental disorder and received this signal at night. She felt an irresistible urge to go there because she was involved in this program. She went there and found this creature. This mysterious being was located in a small house on the second floor. Tamara, as best as she could, took care of the little foundling. She even came up with a name for him, Alyoshka. She found this dwarf, whom she considers her legitimate son, and named him Alyoshka in honor of her deceased grandson. Naturally, she loves him, cares for him, and tries not only to heal him, but also to adopt him. She does everything possible to save him. Tamara's daughter-in-law, also named Tamara, visited the elderly woman and saw this creature alive. On the 3rd of June, I came home. Since then, it has been at my home. We had lunch together. Was it in the village of Kalina? Yes, in the village of Kalina where we lived. We have an apartment. That's what I say. We ate, and she... I look, and she is here. She says, I will go. I will hide the little one. I will hide the little one. I ask, who do you have there? Alyoshka. Good. However, Alyoshka did not look at all like a human child. He had 2 teeth protruding, and they were not like a human's, but like little spades. His body was strange, as if, well, like a television screen. He looked gray. His skin was gray in color. He appeared somewhat gelatinous, soft in appearance. She was also struck by the fact that, as she explained, he had a vertical cat-like pupil and lacked excess shell. She did not notice any hair covering, but the skin color was indeed strange, gray. Then she said that one of his eyes was black, while the other was red. Tamara fed Alyoshka condensed milk, candies, and curd cheese. The elderly woman seemed to believe that this was quite suitable food for a child. Candies, including lollipops, condensed milk, water. That is, light products that are usually not given to children. This mysterious creature was nourished by these products. Candies and sugar have long been used in Russia to appease house spirits, brownies, and other evil entities. Even Tamara herself doubted whether Alyoshka was human. There were grounds for this. Such a thing had not been encountered here before. The appearance of the dwarf was astonishing. All witnesses also spoke of a strange smell emanating from the creature. It had an unusual odor, and this amazing being smelled peculiar. It seemed to me that the smell was similar to that which arises when mixing epoxy glue or resin, something close to this. Only there was pure chemistry there, which does not provoke any reactions. And this smell was such that it caused disgust. It was clearly not a protein, but something else. In particular, it resembled the smell of a new car inside. This is approximately how a plastic toy smells, but living people never smell like that. Eyewitnesses claim that Alyoshka lived in this apartment for more than 1 month. During this time, the amazing creature was seen by many people. Tamara's neighbor, Nina Glazarina, acquaintances of her daughter-in-law, relatives. None of them officially reported this amazing find, although everyone considered Alyoshka to be a humanoid. Everyone felt pity for him and a desire to help. Several women with maternal experience gathered around him. It seemed that the creature was under care, and there was no need to worry about its fate. And suddenly, these experienced mothers began to feed him things that a normal mother would not give to her child. They could never explain to me why they did this. Probably, I guess, just because he did not look like a normal child. Tamara Prosvetina did not hide that a child found in the cemetery lived in her apartment, whom she called her son. The residents of the small town began to suspect that the elderly woman's illnesses had worsened and turned to the local psychiatric clinic. When the orderlies and the paramedic arrived at the scene, they noticed that another living creature was in the apartment, wrapped in a diaper. The medics could not leave the child unattended, and apparently they came to the conclusion that the woman was not in her right mind. She was swaddling a cat and saying that she had a child that needed to be fed. No paramedic would leave a child behind, even if he looked strange. In that case, he would have been immediately hospitalized, but instead, there was only a cat in the apartment. The psychiatric clinic where Prosvetina was taken is located in the village of Novogorny, 10 kilometers from Kashaitim. According to one version, while Tamara was in the hospital, no one visited her apartment, and the mysterious creature died of hunger. According to another version, the vacant apartment became a place for noisy drinking parties, and alcoholics from the street held their celebrations there. Perhaps one evening, someone from this company accidentally or intentionally killed the creature. These people openly feared the unusual being. Unfortunately, it is now difficult to establish the true cause of Alyoshka's death. It is unknown whether the creature died from food poisoning, injury, or due to the carelessness of the people who interacted with it. When Tamara found Alyoshka dead, she did not know what to do with the corpse. Vladimir Nerdanov was also in the apartment, and he quickly oriented himself. He took the creature, which was called a mummy, and said that he would hand it over to the right hands for clarification of the circumstances. As he explained, he placed the corpse in the sun in the garage, and within a few hours it dried out. The mummy remained in Nerdinov's apartment for about a month and would likely have stayed there longer if he had not told Captain Yevgeny Makachev about his discovery. Investigator Vladimir Bendlin began his independent investigation, but he clearly lacked facts. He understood that a complete volume of information was necessary to choose any direction for the investigation. While he was gathering data, he noted that any versions had the right to exist, even the most insane ones. The story of the Kishtim dwarf remains an unsolved mystery. Questions about whether a living humanoid was in Kishtim in the summer of 1996 and whether Alyoshka could have been a mutant remain open. Researchers were also interested in where the mummies of the mysterious creature are now and whether the special services are involved in this story. Despite the fact that Alyoshka died, the question of what he looked like in life remains. Researcher of the Kishtim mystery Vadim Chernobrov, based on eyewitness accounts, created a composite sketch of the astonishing being. It was drawn to life-size, reflecting the external appearance of the Kishtim dwarf. According to descriptions, the creature had a plump body, long arms and legs, as well as distinctive facial features. Researchers carefully collected all observations and clarifications, counting 20 differences from Homo sapiens. This included cat-like eyes, a skull shaped like a tulip, the absence of ear shells, a full set of teeth, a tongue shaped like a spoon, the absence of a neck and almost a complete nose, as well as the absence of sexual characteristics and excretory organs. Such a number of unusual facts allows for the formulation of many hypotheses about the origin of the Kishtim phenomenon. The first version, an unknown animal to science. This version has been repeatedly discussed in the press. A fact in its favor is, for example, this. When the paramedics took Tamara Prosperina to the psychiatric clinic, someone else remained in the apartment. I asked these paramedics, how could you leave him? It doesn't matter, I emphasize again. I am not claiming that they are aliens. You left a living being. At that moment it was helpless. The woman screamed and begged you not to kill him. That is, by your inaction, you effectively killed him. Do you know what the orderlies replied to me? They said, we thought it was a kitten, so perhaps Tamara Prosvetina brought an ordinary cat from the cemetery. Eyewitnesses claimed that the creature had cat-like eyes, a miniature nose, and a pink tongue resembling a little spoon. No matter how much I looked at the photographs and video recordings, one could see anyone in this creature, but definitely not a kitten. The structure of Alyoshinka's skull resembles that of an intelligent being more, as the frontal lobe is clearly larger than the facial part. The Kishtim dwarf could hardly have been a representative of the animal world. According to the doctors who examined the mummy, he must have moved on 2 legs, although his arms were somewhat longer than those of a human. Yes, they were a little longer. But if his arms were folded in such a way that they were below the knees, it still does not indicate that he could walk on all 4s. To this day, the most widespread version is the assumption that Alyoshinka was a severely mutated premature infant. Since this is the most popular version explaining the Kishtim phenomenon, let us examine it in more detail. Kishtim is located in the foothills of the southern Urals. This area is considered ecologically unfavorable. There are large industrial enterprises here where accidents occur from time to time. It can be noted that this region has suffered from many types of pollution. This includes the accident in Kishtim and a wide range of subsequent accompanying pollutants, including heavy metals settling in the soil and plants, and a vast array of organic pollutants. The recurring environmental pollution year after year naturally has a rather adverse effect on the people living here. The residents of these places, especially children, are exposed to harmful substances. In this area, infants with abnormalities have also been born in the past. Several cases have been recorded. In particular, there was a case where a child was born with flippers. There was also a girl who lacked a rectum and anus. She died right in the maternity ward. In 1957, 4 kilometers from Kishtim at the Mayak Production Association at the plutonium processing plant, an explosion occurred in one of the containers with radioactive waste. Experts believe that the consequences of the explosions in Kishtim are comparable to the disaster at Chernobyl. Could this event have led to the birth of a child with such anomalies? Let us assume that the mother who gave birth to this child was either exposed to radiation or somehow came into contact with toxic substances during the early stages of her pregnancy, when she might not even have known that she was pregnant, and then such damage developed. Premature babies with such deviations from the norm would hardly have been able to survive. Judging by the size, he must have been born at a maximum of 6 months of age. I can state with complete confidence that a premature infant without qualified assistance and special resuscitation equipment cannot survive under any circumstances. For such a being to survive, medical equipment and prolonged qualified care from experienced doctors are necessary. The being known as the Kishtim dwarf lived for at least 3 weeks in ordinary home conditions, without special care, feeding on food completely unsuitable for a newborn. It drank water and ate candies. While drinking water does not seem strange, the question of how exactly it was given this water remains open. As for the candies, perhaps it simply sucked on them, but it is difficult to say. There is a question of whether it could have died not from starvation, but from such a barbaric diet. Considering that all its processes were already disrupted, the addition of a huge amount of sugar could have worsened its condition. It lacked the necessary vitamins and proteins, which could have led to its death. According to eyewitness accounts, the dwarf did not have the usual excretory organs. They claim that Tamara Prosvetina wiped the gelatinous mass protruding through the skin with a cloth. However, this fact does not particularly concern embryologists. If its ureter had been functioning, it could have lived comfortably without these organs, possibly reaching adulthood. People who saw the dwarf alive claimed that it had teeth, but scientists believe that this is not evidence. Teeth in children can develop even during intrauterine development, and this is not unusual. A small percentage of children are born with congenital malformations, which could explain the numerous deviations from the norm in the Kishtim dwarf. However, the absence of a navel in Alyoshenko remains a mystery. All people have navels, and it is by this feature that one can distinguish aliens who do not have them. The umbilical cord provides nourishment to the embryo, and therefore the dwarf should have had one. Perhaps the people who saw Alyoshenko did not find the umbilical cord because it was located on another part of the body. Perhaps the connection with the mother was through vessels located on the leg or back, but this needed to be thoroughly investigated when he was alive. Nevertheless, the conclusions of pathologist Stanislav Samoshkin and forensic medical expert Lyubov Romanova do not support the version of a premature baby. In a newborn, the bones have a cartilaginous structure, whereas Alyoshka's skeleton was fully formed. The bones were normal, shriveled, and the fingers were also developed. Some scientists are critical of the version of a premature baby. An experienced pathologist and his assistants could have determined who Alyoshka was during the external examination. Pathologist Samoshkin carefully examined everything in the presence of Romanova, who had 18 years of experience in her field. They concluded that there are a number of significant differences. There is also an intriguing hypothesis that Alyoshka could have been a parasitic twin. Parasites are a type of conjoined twins, but unlike conjoined twins, parasites are inseparable. This phenomenon is studied very little, but it is known that such an anomaly occurs at the earliest stages of embryonic development. Parasitic twins are always one-sided and completely dependent on the body in which they develop. A unique case is when a girl develops and her twin turns out to be a uterus, which can be born when she reaches puberty. In some cases, serious questions arise, especially when it comes to unusual births. For example, when a child is born, they are not aware of their situation. This phenomenon is observed in both animals and humans. The existence of a parasitic twin that was born evokes associations with Alyosha, who is being discussed. This theory explains why no umbilical cord was found with Alyosha. In this case, the presence of a navel is not necessary, as Alyosha could have been nourished through a part of the skin fused to the uterine membrane. In medical literature, only 76 such cases have been recorded. At first glance, this version seems the most convincing, but it does not explain the absence of protein decomposition and the specific smell, the origin of which remains a mystery for the pathologist, medical expert, and eyewitnesses. Everyone who saw the being, both alive and dead, noted a strange smell. It also raises doubts about the possibility that the hidden twin could have lived an entire month outside the donor's body. Nevertheless, most people who witness this astonishing creature are convinced that Alyosha was an extraterrestrial. This is also stated by Lyubov Romanova, a paramedic at the Shtinskaya Hospital. I have been working in forensic examination since 1980, since the 18th of March. But I have never seen anything like this. We have had miscarriages and everything has happened. Our work is very extensive, but we have certainly never encountered anything like this. Such a little one. Well, as they say, a little one, but this can certainly be a little one, yet still not human, I think. The fourth version, extraterrestrial, is the most exotic. There is no direct evidence, however, this theory has indirect confirmations. Unidentified flying objects are often observed over the Chelyabinsk region. Documentary filmmaker Alexander Kipkalo, who makes films about paranormal phenomena, shares his experience. I observed a levitating object in 1992. It had the shape of an ellipse, positioned vertically, and was scanning the area of the city of Ozersk with a powerful yellow beam. Kipkalo suggests that if Alyosha is indeed a representative of an extraterrestrial civilization, then he could have been a biorobot. If we imagine that the civilizations visiting us are much farther away, then creating such a biomachine is nothing for them. They can create these machines by analogy, possibly using templates from our physical bodies. There are numerous versions and assumptions. Although no one claims that Alyosha could be a representative of other worlds, it is also impractical to refute this. The absence of genetic material does not allow for DNA analysis, and without these studies, all versions remain unprovable. The mummy of Alyosha has disappeared and it is unclear where it is now. This remains an unsolved mystery of the aliens, the Kishtim dwarf. During an independent investigation, the mummy was kept by investigator Vladimir Bendlin. The mummy of Alyosha was stored in my freezer. At that time, I must give credit to our government. I had absolutely nothing in the freezer, so the freezer was free, as was the rest of the refrigerator. I placed it there in a plastic sarcophagus and set an average temperature to avoid freezing this biological material, just in case. Additional research was required to conclude this story. Captain Evgeny Mokachev, who was handling the case, even contacted Chelyabinsk, where he was informed that the examination would be very costly and that it would be impossible to carry it out at his own expense. It was necessary to have either a resolution to initiate a criminal case or an indication for conducting an examination. However, when investigator Vladimir Bendlin stumbled upon a newspaper clipping, he reached out to the Society Star Academy UFO Contact by Zolotov's Method from the city of Kamyensk-Uralsky. Just 2 hours later, representatives of this organization arrived in Kashtim in a brand new BMW, which raised suspicions, as this car was considered unattainable for cities like Kashtim and Kabinsk-Uralsky. Representatives of this dubious organization took the mummified corpse of the creature for further research. Mokachev handed over the mummy, negative photographs, and materials that he had seized at the scene, including the cotton mattress on which Lashenka lay. At this point, the trail of the Kashtim dwarf disappears. Nevertheless, a videotape featuring the mummy ended up in the hands of Moscow journalist Nikolai Varsagov, who published a lengthy article in one of the central newspapers. Soon, a film crew from Tokyo arrived and cached him. Japanese journalists conducted their own investigation, exercising caution and thoroughly examining all aspects of the case. The film about the cached-him dwarf generated significant interest in Japan, and the Japanese began to contemplate the continuation of the story. They wanted to interview Tamara Prosvietarina. However, the day before their arrival, the elderly woman died under strange circumstances. At 2 o'clock in the morning, she stepped onto a deserted highway and was struck by a car while barefoot and in a nightgown. A year later, a producer from another Japanese television channel came to Cash Team, offering an outrageous sum for the mummy, or at least for a sample of the fabric of the astonishing creature. The producer from Deguchi Masao's company approached Mokachev with an offer to pay $200,000 in cash to whoever would hand over the mummy. However, by that time, no one could accurately say whose hands the dwarf's mummy was in. A considerable amount of time has passed since then, but the mystery of the Cash Team phenomenon remains unsolved to this day. New information appears in the newspapers, and questions regarding the origin of the Cash Team dwarf and its current whereabouts are actively discussed on the internet. The traces of the dwarf are found now in Yekaterinburg, now on Rublev-Uspensky Highway in Moscow, and there are rumors that the mummy has long crossed the border of Russia. There are grounds to believe that intelligence services may have been involved in this story. On this note, one could put a period to the case of the Cash Team dwarf, but events that may have occurred in Puerto Rico 20 years ago confirm the most fantastic hypotheses. In the mountains of this country, locals killed a creature resembling Alyosha with a stick. Even the minor details matched: the structure of the skull, the size of the skeleton. After this case caught the interest of U.S. intelligence agencies, all factual traces of the mysterious brother of the Cash Team dwarf's presence in Puerto Rico disappeared. 20 years ago, an absolutely identical case occurred in Puerto Rico, and this authentic story also had the same ending. The disappearance of the preserved body of the mysterious creature known as the Cash Team dwarf remains one of the most intriguing mysteries. It is unknown where all the materials went, including negatives and footage related to this phenomenon. There are several versions of what might have happened. The first version suggests that these creatures leave no traces and try to remove all items that testify to their presence. The second version points to possible intervention by intelligence agencies. The third version suggests that someone benefits from hiding the truth. Today, perhaps for the first time, an attempt was made to tell the story of the Cash Team phenomenon through the eyes of eyewitnesses. The more the life of this mysterious creature is investigated, the more questions arise. Researchers emphasize that they do not claim or refute any versions. Although hypotheses about the abnormality of human development seem the most plausible, they should not be considered the only possibilities. It is important not to treat with irony those who honestly express their opinions. Everyone who saw Alyosha alive or held his mummy in their hands doubts his earthly origin. Nevertheless, neither specialists nor eyewitnesses have drawn any definitive conclusions. At this moment, everyone is interested in the question of where the Cash Team dwarf went. However, researchers are more concerned about where this creature came from and how it ended up with a mentally ill woman.